The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
The house at the end of the dirt road, where disembodied voices whisper and strange sounds make the living shiver.
Where shadows lurk at the edge of the woods, just outside your back door. And mysterious lights speed beyond reason across the clear night sky.
Odd events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone.
Well, guess what?
What?
It's our 175th anniversary.
No, it's not.
It's our 175th episode.
That's a little bit better.
I don't think I'd want to reach 175.
Anniversaries?
Right.
Absolutely not. That would be horrible.
I'd be nothing but skin and bones by then.
I know. We'd have to be vampires reaching that sort of anniversary.
Yeah, if I could look like this at 175, I could deal with it.
You'd be all right with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. 175 episodes makes a little bit more sense.
It's what I meant.
Right.
You know how my mind is. Gets ahead of itself.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess you could think of it as an anniversary if each week we're celebrating that we're coming back together in this studio and recording another episode. That would be an anniversary, I guess.
Well, every episode that we do is, one step closer to our goal of hitting that first 250.
Right.
And we're still going strong.
We are.
It's not easy.
No, it's not.
It's a lot of work. But it's a hell of a lot of fun.
It is.
Recording. Researching's fun, but, well, it grows on you.
It grows on you? Do you mean it grinds on you?
It grinds on you. Wow, I'm not having a good night, am I? Maybe I should just shut up. I know I drank last night, but wow, it's really affecting my brain. Maybe it's time to, go easy on the moonshine.
That could be a sign, yes.
Maybe drink something a little bit more, more mellow, like some Jägermeister or something.
Right, Jägermeister.
All right, everyone. So we have something pretty interesting that one of our listeners, Jess, sent to us.
Yeah, it's a link that she shared. She thought that we would get a kick out of it, and we did. So apparently, back in 2014, there was a young man, a 24-year-old young man, in Portsmouth, England, and he'd been out drinking with some friends, and then after they had been bar hopping, he decided to wander into Kingston Cemetery. And as he was wandering around, he was kind of getting into the spirit of things, no pun intended, and feeling the ambiance. And so he started kind of lurching around and waving his arms in the air and going, woo! Unfortunately, there also happened to be a group of grieving family members.
Oh, no.
Who were visiting the grave site of a recently departed loved one. And they didn't take too kindly to the young gentleman wandering around going, woo. So he ended up arrested and he was fined 75 pounds for his foray into the cemetery.
You gotta admit, it's pretty darn funny, though.
Well, yeah, I just, if you're going to be goofing around in a cemetery, maybe read the room a little bit.
Check your
check
surroundings.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, though. If you're in there by yourself and, you're feeling a little giddy, running around going, woo, seems like a fun release,
Yeah, it could be.
But there's always somebody watching or somebody around, it seems. It's something I would do and then feel bad about.
Yeah.
Just not thinking.
Yeah.
Going, woo.
Yeah.
But
anyway, we thank Jess for that link. It definitely made us chuckle a little bit.
And didn't you have something similar when you were in college and happened to you in a graveyard?
Well, it actually happened to me and Jess.
Right. Jess is not only a listener, an avid listener, but she's also one of Beth's friends from college, her roommate.
She was my college roommate. So yeah, we were cutting through Riverside Cemetery because between campus and our friend's apartment, that was a shortcut. And we were walking through and we kept thinking that we heard footsteps following us. And then we thought, well, it's just our own footsteps echoing off the gravestones. So we'd stop and then we'd still hear footsteps continuing. And so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this guy just came looming out of the darkness and he was like, I'm a ghost, as he walked by. And, it was just some townie walking to his friend's house. But he scared us.
Well, that cemetery was a known shortcut from the college over to South Peru Street or South Catherine.
South Catherine Street.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that shortcut many a times at night on the way home from work.
Yeah.
It's a cool cemetery, though. It's one of our favorites.
It's a great cemetery.
It's got a couple mausoleums in it.
It does, and some beautiful statues.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely. Well, let's forego any housekeeping this week. And let's get right into our stories.
All right, so I get to go first this week, right?
Yeah, you do.
Okay, I'm excited about this story. I think this is a perfect 175th. No, see, I almost said anniversary.
See?
Perfect 175th episode story.
I planted a seed.
You did. As the crew of the Donaldson set foot on Wrangel Island off the coast of Siberia on August 19th, 1923, they weren't sure what they were going to find. They were a rescue mission sent to retrieve whatever was left of the Silver Wave's crew that had been stranded on the inhospitable island for 2 years. As they caught sight of the little huts huddled together, their worst fears were realized when they came upon the decomposing corpse of one of the 5-person crew, hidden behind a row of wooden crates. But then a figure emerged from one of the huts, wrapped in a handmade reindeer skin coat and clutching a very much alive cat. That figure was Ada Blackjack, a woman and the sole survivor of the doomed Wrangel Island expedition. It was remarkable that Ada was part of the crew at all, and even more remarkable that a woman with 0 survival training had somehow survived on the frozen Arctic Ocean island for 2 years. Ada Blackjack was born in 1898 in Spruce Creek, Alaska. Spruce Creek is a remote settlement north of the Arctic Circle, about 8 miles outside of the village of Solomon and 40 miles east of Nome. When she was 8 years old, she and her mother moved to Nome, where she attended a Methodist missionary school. Although Ada was Inupiat, she was raised in basically an assimilation culture environment by the missionaries. She was taught to cook, clean, and mend clothes like a white child. She was also taught to read and write in English. She was not taught any survival or wilderness skills whatsoever. According to Atlas Obscura, Ada married Jack Blackjack when she was 16. Blackjack was a local dog musher, and their marriage was volatile. Blackjack was abusive. The couple had 3 children, 2 of whom died in infancy, and their third child, Bennett, suffered from ill health, including tuberculosis. In 1921, while on the Seward Peninsula, Blackjack abandoned his family, and Ada had to walk the 40 miles back to Nome, carrying 5-year-old Bennett when he was too weak to walk by himself. Now, pretty much penniless and alone, Ada knew that she couldn't care for Bennett the way he deserved and needed, especially not on the meager salary she made as a seamstress. Heartbroken, Ada gave him to the local orphanage, vowing to return for him once she had some financial security. When she heard about a new Arctic expedition that was looking for a local person to cook and mend clothes, that was willing to pay $50 a month, she wondered if it was something she could do. Now, remember, she had absolutely no survival or wilderness training. But there were other Alaskan guides signed on to accompany the 4-man expedition to Wrangel Island. So, despite her crippling fear of polar bears, Ada decided to go for it. The expedition was being funded by explorer Vilhjalmur Stephenson, a Canadian-born explorer. Stephenson's real name was William Stevenson, but he changed his name while attending college in the U.S. Ada had no way of knowing that Stephenson didn't have the best track record. He'd previously mounted an expedition to explore the regions west of the Perry Archipelago in 1913. That expedition had started with 3 ships, the Karluk, the Mary Sachs, and the Alaska. During the trip, when the Karluk got marooned in the ice, Stephenson left the ship under the guise that he was going on a hunting party for fresh meat. While he was gone, the ship was carried off by the moving ice. The ship splintered apart, crushed, and sank. 4 of the survivors made it to Herald Island, but later died. 4 others made it to Wrangel Island, but also died. Then several others made it to Wrangel Island, but 3 more of them died. Eventually, the 11 remaining crew were picked up and rescued in September of 1914. Stephenson continued on with nothing but his rifle, by sledge, living off of polar bear meat, until he was able to meet back up with the Mary Sachs after 92 days. This time around, basically, Stephenson wanted to claim Wrangel Island for Britain, even though Britain hadn't expressed any real interest in claiming the island. There had been some debate back and forth between Russia, Canada, the U.S., and Britain over ownership of the island, but nothing was truly certain, although Russia was making the loudest claim. Stephenson believed that if he could establish a permanent British settlement on the island for 2 years, that it would automatically become a British territory. But this is where it gets tricky. Some sites say that neither Canada or Britain agreed to fund his trip. Some sites say that Canada did agree. And then some say that although Stephenson was denied funding from both countries, he decided to just go ahead and do it anyway. Ada, like I said, knew none of this. And she certainly had misgivings when she met the 4-man crew. Alan Crawford, who was only 20 years old, Lorne Knight, who was 28, Fred Maurer, who was 28, and Milton Gall, who was just 19. So 2 28-year-olds, a 20-year-old, and a 19-year-old are her expedition crew.
Right. Well, this guy, he's a piece of work. She really knows how to pick him.
Don't blame her.
Just saying.
Stephenson, it turned out, was not going with them, and neither were any of the Alaskan guides who had initially agreed to accompany them. Every single one backed out.
Well, it seems to me then that's when she should have backed out.
It was good money, and she had a sick child.
Yeah, it's all good and well if you come home after.
Right. I don't think she still knew what she was getting into. She figured, okay, maybe the men aren't so hot, but she didn't understand where they were going, I don't think. Something else that Ada most likely didn't know was that Fred Maurer had been stranded on Wrangel Island once before, in 1914. But like I said, $50 a month was far more money than Ada had ever earned before, and the charismatic Stephenson convinced her that the small Wrangel Island would provide more than enough food to last them the 12 months until the relief ship arrived. And so, on September 9th, 1921, Ada boarded the Silver Wave with the 4 strangers and 1 cat named Victoria. The voyage to Wrangel Island was uneventful. It went pretty smoothly. But Ada was not prepared for what awaited her. First, Stephenson's description of a small and plentiful island was highly exaggerated. Wrangel Island is huge, spanning 2,900 square miles, 93 miles long and 50 miles wide. It has a severe polar climate and is blanketed in ice for most of the year with cyclone-like winds. It also has the highest population of polar bears in the world. Add to that ringed seals, walrus, wolverines, Arctic fox, wolves, and lemmings.
A slight exaggeration.
Just a little bit. According to OceanWideExplorers.com, Ada walked off by herself along the beach so that the men wouldn't see her crying as the ship sailed away from them. She wrote in her diary, quote, "I thought at first that I would turn back, but I decided it wouldn't be fair to the boys," end quote. So, even she considered them boys. They were just teenagers, pretty much.
Young.
At first, she was depressed, and she stayed to herself, agonizing over the decision she had made and wondering if she would ever see Bennett again. The crew didn't take this too well. On November 21st, 1921, Lorne Knight wrote in his journal, quote, "The seamstress refused to patch a pair of boots today, so I tied her to the flagpole until she promised to repair them. Kindness failing to accelerate, I am trying something more forceful."
Oh,
end
no.
quote.
That's sick.
Ada went to work after that. While the men did the hunting, cared for the sled dogs, and set up meteorological instruments, Ada mended their clothing and cooked for them. Months went by. Their supplies had already begun to run low by the end of that first summer, but they did the best they could and somehow made it through their first winter. What they didn't realize, and honestly they had no way of knowing, is that Stephenson was struggling to raise enough money to send the promised relief ship. And by the time the Canadian government finally agreed to fund it, it was too late. The pack ice had closed in too tightly. Ada, the 4 men, and the cat were stuck for another entire year. The temperature stayed at a steady minus 48 degrees. Night came down with scurvy. All 5 of them were starving. According to OceanWideExpeditions.com, on January 28, 1923, Crawford, Maurer, and Gall decided that they would set out across the ice towards Siberia in search of help. Ada and Knight, who was deathly ill, were left behind. For the next 6 months, Ada did everything she could to keep Knight alive. She did all of the hunting, repairing, cooking, and nursing. When she managed to catch some game, she made sure that he had the most meat. She did everything she could to make sure he was as comfortable as possible, including layering his bed with oatmeal sacks to prevent bed sores and putting warm bags of sand over his feet to prevent frostbite. Through it all, Knight was filled with rage, and both physically and verbally abused her. According to Atlas Obscura, he would try to kick her or punch her while complaining that she was taking terrible care of him, starving him on purpose. He even went so far as to say that her husband had been right to abuse her and then abandoned her, and it was no wonder her children had died under her care.
Oh boy, I think at this point, if I was Ada, I'd have put one of those oatmeal bags over his face while he was sleeping.
Well, I can see that, but also at the same time, the other 3 guys have not come back. It's been 6 months. And so maybe the thought of being alone was scarier than being with the monster she knew.
Yeah, waiting hand and foot on this guy, giving up rations to him? Nah, I think I would have rather been by myself.
Ada wrote in her diary, quote, "He never stop and think how much it's hard for women to take 4 man's place, to woodwork and to hunt for something to eat, and to take the shit out for him." End quote. Knight passed away on June 23rd. Ada had gotten scurvy herself by this point, and she was too weak to try and bury Knight's body. So instead, she left him inside his sleeping bag and built a barricade out of boxes around him to keep the wild animals away. She moved into the supply tent to escape the smell of his decaying remains. And there she stayed for the next 3 months, completely alone except for Victoria the cat, who had somehow, miraculously, remained alive. Ada used driftwood to repair the tent, and she built a gun rack over her bed and a viewing platform so that she was always prepared if polar bears approached the camp. She set her own traps to catch foxes and learned to shoot birds. She also made a boat out of driftwood covered in stretched canvas and animal skins. And when she was bored, she used the expedition's photography equipment to take pictures of herself.
Oh my God. That's awesome.
I know.
Well, Ada has stepped up. She's become resourceful.
Yes.
And she's learning to be self-sufficient
And
in a harsh environment.
Thanks to her boredom and playing around with the photography equipment, we have pictures of her.
I know, that's
there, awesome. You know. She also drafted a will asking that her uncollected pay be divided up between her mother and her son, and that she wanted her sister Rita to have custody over Bennett. And then on August 20th, 1923, the schooner the Donovan sailed to the coast of Wrangel Island. They came ashore and they saw Knight's body. And then they saw Ada wrapped in a reindeer coat that she had made herself. She had been stranded on that island for 2 years. One of the crew said, quote, "Blackjack mastered her environment so far that it seems likely she could have lived there another year, although the isolation would have been a dreadful experience." End quote. When Ada returned to Alaska, she was a minor celebrity surrounded by media attention. The press referred to her as the female Robinson Crusoe. Ada insisted that all she wanted was to live with her son, Bennett. Her paycheck, when she did receive it, was far less than Stephenson had promised. But Ada used it to get Bennett medical treatment in Seattle. Meanwhile, Stephenson wrote a book about Ada's experience and continued to profit on her story for years. Ada, on the other hand, found herself suddenly vilified by the press and by an unlikely source. One of the crew members of the rescue ship, the Donovan, had purposely torn pages out of her diary where she had written about caring for Knight. This crew member then started telling the press that Ada had willfully and purposefully let Knight die. Before long, the press had done an about-face and were now questioning her story, saying she hadn't done many of the things she had done in order to survive. How could a woman have outlived 4 men and done it so well? Eventually, the truth came out that her diary had been tampered with and that she was telling the truth. The crewman of the Donovan apologized. Bennett lived to age 58 when he passed away from a stroke in 1972. Ada passed away in a nursing home in Palmer, Alaska in 1982. She was 85 years old. She was buried right next to Bennett.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, this Stephenson guy, not a nice dude, huh?
He definitely is a controversial figure in explorer circles. There are those that support him and those that say he was a piece of crap.
He seems like a con artist.
Yeah. The fact that he wrote a book about her experiences that just makes me so mad.
Right. Anything to cash in. Get some money.
Yeah.
Well.
But isn't that a great story?
It's an awesome story.
And I'd never heard of her before. So I thought if I hadn't heard of her, perhaps you all had not heard of her, and you should, because she's pretty cool.
And she had a reindeer coat that she made herself, and she had her black cat with her.
Well, I don't know if it was a black cat.
I imagine it as a black cat, so we're going to go with that.
Vic the cat.
Very cool. Well, we'll return with my story after this quick break.
Hey, did you know? You were probably taught in kindergarten that you have 5 senses: touch, taste, sight, smell, and sound. But scientists have argued for years that those 5 just don't cut it. What about our sense of balance? Or our sense of hunger or thirst? According to some scientists, humans may have as many as 32 different senses, which include sensing electromagnetic fields, changes in temperature and elevation, and proprioception, or body awareness. But if you're a die-hard believer in everything being boiled down to just those original 5, that's okay. Just let us know which of those 5 you're using the next time you realize you have to go to the bathroom. Who'da thunk it?
All right, we're back from the break. And for my story tonight, I'm going to take all of you wanderers on a tour of the Athens Lunatic Asylum. Across the Hawking River from Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, there is a massive and a very impressive Gothic brick building. Perched on a hill surrounded by 700 acres, with its symmetrical towers and 3 stories of white trim balconies, It just commands attention, especially since each side is flanked by identical 3-story wings, and there are several other buildings situated around it. It looks both regal and commanding. Today, it's part of Ohio University, and it's known as the Ridges. To give you some idea of the size of the complex, it houses the Voinovich School of Leadership and Public Service, the Ridges Land Lab, the University Observatory, graduate art studios for the Chaddock and Morrill College of Fine Arts, the Institute of Molecular Medicine and Aging, the Child Development Center, the Kennedy Museum of Art, the Ohio Museum Complex, and several other administrative offices.
So it's massive.
Yeah, it's huge. But it's hard not to look at the exterior of the main building and wonder what it was originally used for. Because despite its grandeur, it honestly looks like an asylum from the 1800s. And for over 100 years, that's exactly what it was. The Ridges was originally the Athens Lunatic Asylum. Throughout the 1800s, it wasn't unusual for people to be considered, quote, insane for all kinds of reasons. Epilepsy, menopause, hysterics, what they called postpartum depression, distemper, masturbation, tuberculosis were all reasons a person could be sent away. In the late 1800s, Dr. Thomas Kirkbride came up with a groundbreaking plan for helping patients. Rather than have them locked away in prison-like establishments, he thought that beautiful scenery and hard work outdoors was a way to, quote, train the mind. Kirkbride Plan asylums sprung up all over the country, and in 1874, the asylum in Athens opened its doors. Its healing landscapes included ponds, fields for farming, boating, livestock barns, a dairy barn, greenhouse and orchards, and vegetable gardens. His idea was that patients could keep busy doing work outside in the fresh air while enjoying the view. Ideally, they could become a cloistered and self-sufficient community. Inside this massive building, there were separate wings for the men and women, and separate dining halls. The building could accommodate 572 individuals, almost double the number Kirkbride recommended. The very first patient admitted at the asylum was a 14-year-old girl with epilepsy. Within a year, 31 men and 18 additional women were admitted with epilepsy. Over the next 3 years, 51 women were admitted due to postpartum depression and 32 for menopause. 81 men were admitted for masturbation. Picking fruit, rowing a boat, mending a shirt, or weeding a garden were seen as the best ways to, quote, cure them. Allegedly, there is an undated carving in one of the sandstone walls that says, quote, I was never crazy.
I can imagine if you're locked up because you're going through menopause.
Or you're masturbating.
Right. Let's lock them up. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
You know how it was back then.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do.
People were locked up for all kinds of reasons that now we just think is
normal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
By 1903, the asylum had adopted an additional way of thinking, and a row of cure cottages were built. These cottages were like dormitories, but they were separated from the main building. The mid-20th century brought even more changes in the way patients were treated. Hydrotherapy, art therapy, lobotomies, and electroshock therapy were introduced, as well as drugs like Thorazine. When Thorazine became widely used, Kirkbride's plan was essentially abandoned. And in the 1970s, when the federal government ruled that people must be paid for their work, the Kirkbride plan ended altogether. In the 1950s, the asylum was Athens' largest employer, servicing 1,800 patients from 15 of Ohio's counties.
In a building that was designed for only 572 patients.
Exactly. But, as we know,
I know.
there was always overcrowding.
I know, but it always just amazes me every time I hear it about a different place, because I guess I hope that things are going to be different.
Yeah, but that was the thing back then. They always started off with good intentions. There was a maximum limit of people, and then they were just too many of these people that needed a place to go, and, well, these places took them in and soon became overcrowded and understaffed. And then from there on, things got pretty bad. By 1985, the patient population had dropped to just 200, and with the construction of the Appalachian Behavioral Health Care Center, the asylum was sold to Ohio University in 1988. It closed its doors to patients in 1993. So it wasn't that long ago.
No.
Today, the Art Center is in the former Dairy Barn, and the Kennedy Museum of Art is in the main administrative building. The School of Leadership and Public Affairs is housed in 3 of the outbuildings. Ironically, one of the cure cottages, Cottage B, was demolished in 2013 due to high levels of asbestos, which is ironic since it once housed tuberculosis patients.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
That makes a lot of sense.
Well, they didn't know back then.
I know they didn't.
During its 119 years as an asylum, there were obviously many, many deaths. There are 3 cemeteries at the Ridges, with a total of 1,930 graves. Only 271 of them have names. That means that 700 women and 959 men's graves only have a number on their headstones. This includes 80 veterans of the Mexican War, Civil War, Spanish-American War, and World War I. During the 1980s, when the state no longer took care of the cemeteries at all, it became a popular spot for vandals and squatters, making those unnamed graves even more forgotten. Many were broken. But for the last 25 years, the Athens chapter of the National Alliance of Mental Illness has worked tirelessly to both restore the cemeteries and to try and give back names to the deceased. Since many of the medical records are still sealed, it has been a long process. Outside organizations have been working to give names and stories back to the thousands of patients who lived at the Ridges. But it's part of a college campus. And as you can imagine, ghost stories about the Ridges being haunted have existed for decades. And a few national headlines have only fueled the rumors. Like in 1978, when a woman named Margaret Schilling went missing. Margaret was a patient at the asylum, and according to Little House of Horrors, she wasn't found for 42 days. When they did find Margaret, she was lying on her back with her arms crossed over her chest. All of her clothes were neatly folded in a pile on a chair next to her. Her cause of death was cardiac arrest, and there were no signs of foul play. But the gruesome part is that due to weather conditions and the fact that she was found on a concrete floor on the top floor of abandoned building 20, a permanent stain was left behind in the shape of her body. Her ghost has allegedly been seen staring down from the window of the room she was discovered in. So that's a pretty disturbing image.
Yeah.
There are those like Athens local Tom O'Grady, the executive director of the Southeast Ohio History Center, who truly wish that Schilling's story could be told fully, rather than just the gruesome outcome of her death. O'Grady lived at the Ridges for 3 years and continued to volunteer there for a decade. He said in a WOUB.org article that he has seen the stain, but he has never seen Schilling's ghost. But the stain and the ghost stories tend to go hand in hand. He would prefer that people think of her as a person whose family loved her and that her humanity shouldn't be forgotten. And I gotta say, I agree. And I hope the university chooses to do just that. Now, as far as other ghosts at the ridges, there seems to be a lot of them, although it is difficult to separate the legends from the true history. Now, I don't doubt that many people are having strange encounters, but the stories that are often used as an explanation are generally wrong. In Lynn Hall, the main building, students as well as employees of the various organizations housed there have reported the sounds of disembodied footsteps and voices. Down in the basement, people have reported hearing the sounds of chains rattling or dragging across the floor. And one of the men's rooms in the building seems to be haunted by an apparition of a man in a long black coat. Students have shared the story for years that at one point, some of the asylum patients were kept in the basement, chained to the wall. And that's why people hear the sound of chains down there. But this is not true. Patients were never chained anywhere at the asylum. So that explanation, which may sound plausible, isn't accurate. In other parts of the building, there have been reports of disembodied screams and the sound of gurneys being wheeled down the hallways. At times, there are entire conversations that seem to be coming from the air. Hearing random yelling inside the building is also a common complaint. And then there are the reports of shadow people roaming the halls ever so often. Shadow people are seen all over the ridges, but people tend to see shadow people the most often in all three of the cemeteries. They are said to hide behind trees and gravestones, and to peer out at people before slipping back into their hiding spots. Strange, unexplained lights have also been reported in the cemeteries. Apparently, there is a perfect circle of headstones in one of the cemeteries, which is rather odd. And there's also the claim that if you look at a map, the three cemeteries, along with the two other area cemeteries, form a pentagram. But both of these claims are unfounded. There are no cases of any witch trials or even accusations of witchcraft in Athens history. And the thing is, according to the students and the lore, almost the entire Ohio University is haunted, including almost every dorm room. There are stories to go with each one, of course, including a terrible bus accident that took the lives of an entire female basketball team. Although the gymnasium isn't part of the former Asylum complex, it does seem to be haunted by the sounds of running sneakers, and basketballs are said to bounce across the floor on their own. Now, as you probably imagine, and I think you all know me by now, I did a quick Google search, and the fatal bus accident story doesn't appear to be an historically accurate event. So, although the students retell the story to explain the paranormal stuff happening there, it isn't true that an entire team passed away. However, there were two fatal bus accidents, one in 1989 and one in 2013, that unfortunately did result in the deaths of two basketball players and a coach. So perhaps that's where the story originated from.
So a kernel of truth, but it's been exaggerated over the years.
Yeah, if this is even a kernel of truth.
Right.
You know, this is nothing like a women's basketball team.
Right.
Passing away.
Right.
In a bus accident. So I don't know. It does sound good. It makes for a good story, though. So it does seem like paranormal things are happening on the campus and at the ridges. But perhaps more effort needs to be put into sharing the true history of the buildings. There are those who are trying. I read a great article from 2024 from the Ohio University campus newspaper by Alyssa Gray, titled "Remembering the Real People of the Ridges, a new perspective on its haunted past, in which she shared the history of the ridges and asked readers to keep the true history in mind, rather than relying on the old legends and lore that may have been passed down for years.
Well, that's awesome then.
Well, yeah, I think she's like-minded, because we love a good ghost story, especially when there's some truth tied to it.
Right.
But when people are fabricating things just to make it scary, well, we don't care for that too much, do we?
No.
And there's so much history to this building that it needs to be told.
But, just to defend college students for just a second, I think as a college student, you either believe the ghost stories or you don't. You believe a place is haunted or you don't.
Right.
And when I lived in McDonough Hall, there was all kinds of weird stuff that happened in that building. And I witnessed weird stuff happening in that building. Things moving on their own and doors opening. The door had a built-in lock.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just open. Like, it has to be unlocked. And
right.
Like, just weird things. And there was an upperclassman who told me that at one point, McDonough Hall, which is the oldest dorm on campus, it looks like an old building. He told me that it was a boys' school and it had burned down and that a bunch of the boys had died.
Right.
Well, I was 20, 19. I didn't know anything about architecture. I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. So I looked at the building and said, okay, yeah, it does look like it could have been a boys' school if they rebuilt it. And maybe a bunch of boys did die. And so that would explain all the stuff going on. I didn't question it because he seemed to believe it, so I believed it.
Right.
Well, that dorm wasn't built till 1952, and there was just marshland. It was marshland. There was no building there. But they did find 2 bodies in 1952 when they built the dorm. So, 2 graves.
Right.
So that would explain maybe why it was haunted.
Well, it could be. But
that, I think, is closer to the truth than saying it was a boys' school.
That's more plausible.
Right.
To think, well, the 2 bodies that were discovered there might have been haunting the building.
Right.
But you got to look at it this way, too. These kids going into college, well, it's their first time probably away from home for months on end with a lot of new people around. So they might be a little bit more scared and impressionable.
Right. And if they believe that something's haunted, they're going to believe the stories. They're not going to think, oh, maybe I should look into that story. Maybe that story's not accurate.
Well, that would be the smart thing to do, to look into the history and see what you can find.
Right.
And then next time you see somebody like that, say, that never happened.
This is what happened. Right.
Right.
This used to be an asylum. And no, people were not chained in the basement, but lobotomies were done here. And,
Well, it does make for good stories from, the older students to scare the hell out of the young girls. And perhaps, have them come over and cuddle with you because they're scared.
Wow. You not only revealed your age by saying that. There was all kinds of things wrong with that.
Like what?
Well, why does it have to be scaring young girls? You don't think young boys get scared too?
Well, yeah, but we're talking about an older guy scaring a younger woman to try to maybe get some cuddle time.
That's not creepy at all. By older guy, you mean what, like a senior?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Well, I guess, you could say that, an older guy could be trying to scare a young guy to get some cuddle time also.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I'm just saying that the way you said it was... Anyway, we're fighting over
But men will do
something.
piggish things sometimes just to scare a girl.
Right. That's true. I heard about Mortimer in the basement, too.
Oh, my. Mortimer in the basement.
Yes. He was supposed to be the janitor that went crazy and killed kids.
Oh, yeah. That always
totally
goes around
fabricated.
somewhere. Of course.
Yeah.
Don't you think that would be all over the news. It'd be easy to look up in one of those reels, the reels that when you were in school that they used,
In my defense, though, the second I heard the Mortimer story, I knew it was bullshit. Like, I knew that there was no way that that was true.
Well, you would think that you're a pretty smart cookie. So I would have thought that you would have probably researched this as soon as you heard it. But I guess you really didn't get into that stuff until you met me.
That's right. I was more interested in cuddling with upperclassmen.
All right. And we're going to leave it right there. Well, if you want to know more about tonight's stories,
you can always check our sources in our show notes.
There's you can.
Lots of stuff there.
There is lots of stuff there.
And I think you were telling me, too, that the Ohio University, like the whole campus, is allegedly haunted. So in the sites that are there, I'm sure they're mentioning all the other dorm rooms or dormitories and all the other buildings on campus that are haunted, too, not just the ridges.
Right.
So if you're really into that and you want to know more about the haunted campus.
And this is one of those stories that we could possibly do a continuation of.
Yes.
And perhaps we will.
In between fielding the hate mail from Ohio University students.
They'll get over it. They're not even listening to us.
This is true.
They're out cuddling. Join us again next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.
See you soon. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to traveling with you again to the places where our minds wander.
If you like what you heard, please take a moment and provide us with a 5-star rating and a comment on your favorite listening platform. It really helps us move up the list and become more visible on the podcast charts so new people can find us.
And thank you all for your continued support.
See you next week for an all-new episode.